Manchester United won, Wolves won. A dismal end to the year for Manchester United and Ruben Amorim as United failed to beat one of the worst teams in Premier League history at Old Trafford. One of those nights where I don't think we got a single thing right. Now, of course, as always, context is extremely important. This was something that I was keen to point out before the match when we were doing our live stream, previewing the game, talking about the amount of players that United are missing right now. We are without some of our best footballers, some of our leaders, some of our experienced players. The United squad is quite hit. And that always meant that coming into this game, producing a top-level performance was always going to be a little bit difficult. Getting the details perfectly right was always going to be a challenge. Because we're missing so many of our good players, any team would struggle with this amount of players missing. So instead, what I really wanted to see, and again I said this in the live stream, I wanted to see the right ideas. The execution at times might be lacking a little bit, and that's understandable, but I wanted to see the right ideas, the right intentions from Ruben Amorim and his squad really, and the tactics that he was trying to deploy for United. The problem was, instead what I saw was intentions that leave me very fearful of the future at United. Because for me, Amorim just got it wrong. We start off with on the ball what Manchester United were doing. There's so many players out of position when they didn't need to be. We've got a left-sided centre-back playing on the right side of defence. We've got a right-back essentially playing as a right winger in possession. We've got a left-back essentially playing as a left winger in possession. And then we've got Xerxes playing in the right 10, a position that doesn't suit him at all. So immediately, this shift back to the 3-4-3 has put a lot of players out of position. But my bigger concern was defensively. Now, defensively, United were clearly back in the 3-4-3 formation, and I got the feeling that Ruben Amorim was sort of trying to contain Wolves by going with a similar shape, and his comments after the game sort of suggested something quite similar. Now, that immediately to me is a big red flag, that's a big warning sign going off, because 20th, one of the worst teams in the Premier League history, came to Old Trafford and our manager thought, how can I contain them? For me, again, if we're talking about ideas, intentions, that's completely wrong. We should be looking to play to our strengths to destroy Wolves as opposed to worrying about how we can contain them. Of course, you have to make tweaks, but we shouldn't be changing our setup to cope with the worst team in history. Just saying. In terms of how we did play, it was incredibly passive. Manchester United sat off very far, and particularly in the first half, let Wolves almost walk the ball from the back for the first 40-50 yards of the pitch. And again, that's not acceptable at Old Trafford under any circumstances. That cannot happen. Manchester United as a football club cannot face the worst team in Premier League history at Old Trafford and let the other team just walk onto them. For example, look at this goal kick, right? Wolves play long from the back, and there's so many Manchester United players deep behind the ball, marking almost no one, that when the second ball drops, Wolves pick it up easily. And that's why in the first half, Wolves sort of went toe-to-toe with United in terms of possession, because it was incredibly easy for them to pick up the second ball, because United was so passive with the setup. So many defenders on the pitch, so many players playing behind the ball. We'll come on to how you can fix this a little bit later on, because Amorim did eventually change it. But this was a massive problem. It was so passive, and it allowed Wolves to come out in the first phase and play through the first 2/3 of the pitch. So what it meant was that in the first half, we saw lots of situations where Wolves were high, where their wing-backs were high, and our wing-backs were pinned, and Manchester United were defending in a back five at home in this sort of game. It's just not needed, it's just not acceptable, it's just not what Manchester United should be. And the problem I've got is, even when we get all these defenders back, we've got a goalkeeper, 5 literal defenders, and then 2 ball-winning midfielders in front of them, and then, of course, some attackers as well, because we always need that. But still, Wolves found it easy to actually attack. Wolves had more touches in the United box than what United had in the Wolves box. So even whilst being passive, even whilst being defensive and trying to contain, Wolves still found it incredibly easy to get into promising positions. Now, they weren't amazing, they didn't suddenly get loads of clear-cut chances, of course, I understand that. But the point is, against Wolves, they shouldn't even be getting close to our box this regularly, and it all comes because of the setup. Now, to be fair to Ruben Amorim, at half-time he made a change. So in the first half, we've only got 5 players high up the pitch, and there's loads of space either side of our 2 central midfielders, leaving space in front of our wing-backs. That was a problem. At half-time, Ruben Amorim makes a change. He takes off Xerxes and he brings on Fletcher, which might feel like a defensive change, but he actually used it to get United more on the front foot and to play more aggressively. You see, Fletcher came onto the pitch as a right-sided midfielder. Sesko and Cunha now became a front 2, and Dorgu moved wide into the left left midfield position. So now Manchester United are in a 4-4-2, and we can see this immediately in the second half. Dorgu now holding a slightly higher starting position off the ball. In theory, this is good from United because rather than having 5 players high, we've now got 6. So we've got an extra man. We should be able to press a little bit higher. And also, there is less space in front of our fullbacks because we've got wide players there. And there's also less space either side of our 2 central midfielders. Immediately now, we have gone into a more compact shape, which means that we can press higher as a cohesive unit. And we've got more chance of winning the ball high. If you can win the ball high more regularly, you can get the ball back more and you can have more possession. We saw that in the second half. Manchester United now on top and dominant in the possession numbers. So in those moments where United were able to get more of the ball, whether that was in the first half or the second half, the question was, can you break Wolves down? Wolves were in quite a compact 5-3-2 shape. They had lots of players behind the ball, as a small team should look to do. They should look to get loads of players into these defensive positions. For United, in these moments, it was a job of moving the ball forward and trying to break them down. Now, the way that we did that was by using a few different build-up shapes in the first phase. For example, we saw situations where United were in a 3-1 shape like this. We can see United in a 3-2 shape, a 2-4 shape, 2-3 shape. Plenty of rotations in the first phase, so sometimes Ugarte would drop wide to fullback and Dalot would go further forward. Sometimes he would play in the middle with them. Sometimes Dalot would drop into a back 3. Lots of different changes in the shape in this first point here. The point always, though, was that United had more players than Wolves. If Wolves tried to be aggressive, they only had 5 players which could jump and press. Manchester United always had at least 6 in this position here, so we could always find the spare man on the far side. So that wasn't a problem for United. Wolves are not a good pressing outfit. United could get on the ball and control possession now. The problem was, there's nothing from there. There was just nothing there from United. Now, I look at this on an individual level. I don't think the United players played well enough. I don't think there was enough spark from the players. Someone like Cunha, for example, just didn't play as well as what he should. This was his moment to sort of be the main man, be the maverick for the team. And he struggled to really get going in this game. He had a poor night. Xerxes didn't do much in the first half. Sesko worked off of moments and should have scored goals in this game, but didn't. Apart from that, United looked really flat, individually, really flat. The players weren't very good. But also, it looked like there was a lack of ideas. Now, you might want to blame that on the players, but for me, if there's 11 footballers on this pitch, all of them lacking ideas, then there's a problem with the coaching, with the way that we are preparing for these games, the way that we are evolving as a team, or not. And, just for this whole match, Manchester United didn't really have a way to reliably move the ball forward, to consistently progress the ball, to consistently pull Wolves out of position and then hurt them. Manchester United failed to do that. Now, I don't know if you will agree with this, but I personally felt the only real hope we had was down the left-hand side, when Dorgu would push further forward to pin Wolves back, and Luke Shaw was now given the freedom to step forward. This, tactically, is sort of my one positive for the day, that we used that wide centre-back, Luke Shaw, now playing in a back 4, to be released, to go forward down the left-hand side, to be the extra man and overload the Wolves' defence. United now have too many attackers, basically, down this side for Wolves to deal with. And Luke Shaw, what we've got here is a player who's very good at crossing. It's one of the few times this season we've seen Shaw released this high, this regularly, and he is one of our best crossers at the football club. He's one of our best, and his deliveries were pretty good. Like I said, Sesko probably should have scored in this game, but there's still a problem here for me. If all we can do against Wolves is work the ball wide and cross, that's not great. It's a little bit predictable. But if we're going to do that, let's make sure as a team we get loads of numbers into the box. When that ball goes wide, we know the cross is going to come in. Let's get loads of players in the centre attacking that ball. Let's get Sesko in there. Let's get Cunha in there. Let's get the winger from the far side. Can we get an extra midfielder in there? Whoever it is, can we really overload Wolves? Can we pin them back? Can we suffocate them in their own box? No, we can't. Only 3 attackers in the box here. That's just not enough. We should be piling numbers forward. This is United at home to Wolves. We need to make that clear again. This is a bad Wolves team. Yes, they have improved slightly in recent weeks, but they are still a bad team. They will lose a lot of football matches this season. They already have, and they will continue to do so. But not against United, because we had no idea. Now, I think the lack of idea was also sort of summed up in the substitutes that we made. So, of course, we've discussed the fact that Fletcher came on at half-time for Xerxes. Nice to see a youngster given an opportunity. We love that. But if we look at his heat map, he played as a wide right midfielder. On the ball, he was playing wide on the right-hand side, so Dalot could invert into the right 10 position. Not the best attacking solution I've ever seen. So that's Fletcher out wide. And then off the ball, he was on the right side of a 4-4-2. So Fletcher came on and basically played as a right-sided midfielder. Now, his performance has been a little bit criticised, and I think it deserves some criticism. He didn't play very well. But of course, he's a very young player, and that's fine. He'll develop. But for me, if you're the manager, give your player a chance. Give your player a chance. If you bring on a central midfielder, don't play him on the right wing. Or if you want to bring on a young player on the right wing, bring on a winger like Mantato or Lacey. Why bring Fletcher on into this position? It just didn't make any sense. We're chasing the game very late on and Heaven comes off for Euro. Was that change really necessary? Was that something that United needed to do? Again, Lacey was there on the bench. We had the option to get that extra attacker. But at the end of this football match, we still had 5 defenders on the football pitch. Now, yes, I know our squad is hit, but we have youngsters there who can attack. Yes, I know it's not always great to throw them into these moments, but if we can't trust them at home in this game when we need a goal, I don't know when we can. Basically, as a collective, as a football club in this match, I just don't think we got anything right. I don't think the players played very well at all. You know, the big names didn't perform. And the manager, for me, just set it up horrifically. I don't think he profiled any individual particularly well with the role that he gave them in this game. And that's a problem. I always say the manager's job is to improve his players firstly, and in a match to give them the best chance of winning. And the way you do that is by tactically preparing, yes, of course, to counter the opposition's ideas, but also to get your players in good positions, good zones that suit them, with the types of players around them that suit them. That's what we should be doing. Not a central midfielder on the right wing for the entirety of the second half, when we've got right wingers on the bench. Not in the first half playing with a back 5, marking only 2 or 3 players. That's not what Manchester United should be. So Ruben Amorim just got it wrong. You can like him as a manager, that's absolutely fine. You can want to defend him, that's fine. But it's only right that we point out when he gets it wrong. We've pointed out positives in recent times when some of the results have been better and some of the performances have been better. This one was a bad one. Ruben Amorim got it completely wrong and the players were set up to fail and did, to be honest, and we failed to beat Wolves and we failed to end the year on a high. We once again failed to capitalise on an opportunity to climb up the table, so it was just all round a failure of a night for Manchester United. And whilst I normally like to be positive, it feels like a nice summary for 2025 as a whole for this football club. It's been a bad one. Let's just hope the new year is going to be a little bit better. For now though, nothing left to talk about. 2025 ends how it's gone really, with a dismal performance that looked a little bit lost and confused by everyone involved. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed this one. And as always, I will see you in the next one in the new year.